This little mini video, I'm just going to do how we're going to introduce our dogs to the harnesses. We have Sully, again as our little demo dog. Please put my harness on. So, sorry, the idea was that I was going to have a new harness for Sully, but I don't. So what I'm using is a detach harness. And the end result we're going to want is that I can put my hand out and say, head in. And he pushes his head through so that I can drop it back and comfortably clip it up onto him before moving off to put either his lead on or to leave the thing. So no stress, no worries, just waiting, ready for me to go. And obviously being able to take it off without any major concerns. So I'm going to start this as if Sully's absolutely petrified of the harness, which clearly he's not. So this will whip through pretty quickly with him, but with your own dogs at home, depending on where they're starting and how long it takes them to progress, will really depend on what you see. So the first stage is I'm not going to have the harness in my hand in their view, because that in itself can be quite scary, because the harness is a nothing item until you pick it up. So the first thing I'm going to do is leave my harness in the middle of the floor. I'm going to send Sully out. I'm not actually going to shut the door because I'm too lazy for that. Out. Just remind him of his threshold training. I'm going to put a couple of treats in and around the harness. The dog shouldn't see you do this because I don't want you anywhere near the harness to start with, and there's just 3 or 4 treats. Okay, Sully, in. And then let him go and investigate those treats. And snaffle them up. Now you're going to keep repeating that until your dog goes, oh, harness, good things. And when therefore they've eaten their treats and they're just snooping around the harness, perhaps they look at it, we're going to mark that again by throwing something down. You can click at that point if you want to, but I just want to reward every time he looks at that harness. Even more so if he pushes it. Sit there. I'm just going to wait and see if he looks at that harness again. Thank you. So that's all I want you to do to start with. You're going to repeat that several times, lots and lots of times potentially, but in a day probably only 2 or 3 times. The next stage is being able to hold it. So if I hold it and I put some food near it, starting off with the other hand and moving that hand closer. So I'm holding it, it's not engaged with you, my hand's over here. So I've got the harness and I'm just going to reward that. Harness, reward that. He's like, this is an easy game, Mum. Then we want him to start looking to the harness and finding the harness. So we're going to start letting him nose at it, and then the food's going to come really close to the harness at that point, but really only once your dog is very, very comfortable. So I have my piece of food, but I need you to look at the harness. We look at the harness and then we get the food. Now, here's what I want to talk to you about harnesses. The easiest harness I've found... Sally, you're not being very helpful. Can you go over there? Can you go away for a minute? Over there, and then just lie down. Just give me a second. So the easiest harness I found with dogs that are not sure about harnesses is the T-touch, simply because, if I come a bit closer, you can see that there are 2 clips at the front, and then as you go around to the back, there are 2 clips again. So basically the harness will totally and utterly detach. So the only bit you initially have to work with is this little bit lying on their front, and then we can desensitise the clips, which is coming in next. So what I'd like to see is to Sully start brushing up against, in a better position, Sully to start brushing up against that harness and being interested in that harness being on, being able to move that harness on their back without it being clipped up in any way. If he wants to remove himself from the situation, he can just walk off. He won't, because there's duck and fish involved, but I want to be able to put that literally wherever I want to on his body. Bearing in mind that you might be a bit clumsy, so you can put it around the ears and roughly on the neck, but not obviously hard, just roughly. We're then going to start building up that we're going to desensitise any clips. So, in order to get this to stay on your dog, I know, then you're going to need to desensitise clips. So that will mean, I should have stayed up here, putting the clip piece, can you see that all right, into the locker bit, and that clip noise. Now that can be quite terrifying to noise-phobic dogs, It can be quite scary because it could have an item where they remember it being clipped and kind of catching hair or something. So this is quite a big stage, and most harnesses will have a clip like this somewhere. So we're going to just click, reward, reset. Did you drop it? I think it went there. And again, click, reward. To start with, you want to have that quite a way away from your dog. Perhaps you want to be right over here with it, out of their way. Eventually you want to be able to clip it near their ears, because that's where the clip's going to happen. And that's one of the reasons that the noise phobic dogs can be so worried about it. So we'll start as small as possible by clipping the clip well away from the dog. The next stage we're going to move on to, and I might have to just shimmy around how I am with you here, is really similar to how we train muzzle. So what I'm going to do is have my harness out, facing so that he offers to put his nose in, and I'm just going to ask that happens, just that he puts his nose in and pushes it in quite well himself, so he has to really push into it, maybe allow him a little bit of pressure as it falls back to his neck. And if I stop rewarding, I'm going to take the harness off. So the only way you get these treats is if your head is in the harness. So we can start building that again. You don't get it because you put your head to the side of the harness, demo dog. So we can put it right there and just offer it. Let me get my arm out of the way. But it's right there. I don't want too much pressure on him. I've run out of treats, so that's it. The harness has to come off. Okay. And again, we're going to offer the harness out. Of course, Sully puts his head straight in because he says, I remember this game now. I'm going to stop treating, so I'm going to take the harness off. Now at this point I like to add in a cue, because Sully's quite a forceful beast, and he sees a situation and goes, oh, I can get fed for this because I love my food. So as you can see, so what I do is I start offering head in, and then we reward right the way forward. I then want to be able to leave it so that I can leave it loose on their back and just reward them when it's on their back. Perhaps take some time in between rewards like that while I go and replenish, while it's just hanging there and loose and around him. Okay, my next stage will be to pull the harness actually around his body. He's looking underneath him because my hand's full of food and he's such a gannet. And just to put the pressure so that it's almost, you can't really see, so it's actually put up around him, and you can see it's only done one side. If he has a bit of a moment, he starts to panic, I'm just going to release that and pull it out over his head. So we shall do that again. Come forward so they can see you. And then we're going to reward just that being there, like that, okay? Your next stage, of course, having desensitised your clip really, really well, you're going to start being a pain. You wouldn't think he's just been fed, would you? I've totally forgot I was doing this and then fed him. And so I'm going to start being able to come forward so they can see you. It's going to be able to clip and then reward. Did you see it? Did you? And then again, clip and reward. And I want to make sure that that's a nice fit. I want to make sure there's no pinchy bits in there. The T-touch harnesses and the front D-ring harnesses will sit quite a lot further forward. Basically, your dog's shoulder blade will pretty much sit in there. The further back it is, the less control you have. So we want it somewhere up around their shoulders. So although this looks like it's a very small harness on him, it is the right fit. So that's why I want to see that the dog is comfortable throughout, that the dog is interested in what you're doing and keen to carry on, and that you take everything really slowly. I certainly would be unlikely to do this with a dog that's just met a harness, to be just throwing it on that way. I want to make sure that I've desensitised the harness. Some people like to put the harness near their food source, so perhaps near the water bowl or near the food bowl. My concern with that is with stainless steel bowls. No, darling. Yeah, I know. Was that a hand touch? There's a stainless steel bowls. Yes, I see you hand touching, but you're not getting the food right now. With the stainless steel bowls, all of these metal rings and stuff will start to ping and clatter on the bowls. So I don't want them to get scared of their food bowls from this. I also think that if the harness is that aversive, they may actually go through a temporary anorexia, and I certainly don't want to make them not want to eat because of a harness. So the harness is best left off in the most comfortable places. So if, like my dogs, they're mostly in the living room with you and spend most of the day with you, then basically wherever you are is fine for the harness. and you'd build that up so that you can get closer and closer to the harness. Perhaps as you walk past the harness you throw something down, in a similar method that we'd use to resource guarding. Me passing this thing or being near this thing is actually a positive thing and not something to be scared of. Anyway, I'm really conscious this has gone over 10 minutes. It's supposed to be a real quick one, so hopefully I haven't waffled too much and some of that makes sense. Thanks.